questions that you like between this and now.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. Attorney Reddington.
Thank you, Judge. Tell us your name, spell your last name for the record, please.
Emily Thorndike, Thorndike.
And what town do you live in?
I actually live in Brooklyn, New York, but I summer on Cape Cod. I'm spoiled like that, so I'm in Chatham.
So where do you live now?
Brooklyn.
But where you live? Are you
In Chatham.
Chatham?
Yes.
And what do you do for work?
I own my own therapy practice right now, so I'm practicing as a business owner and a therapist.
And what is the name of the business?
It's called Wise Mind Therapy Practice.
What is it?
Wise Mind.
Wise Mind?
Yeah.
Okay. And where is that located?
It's a virtual practice, so yeah.
And how long have you been doing that?
So I had my own private practice I opened that January 2023, and then this past May I expanded. I hired somebody, so technically it's a group practice, but I've owned my own business technically for, 4 years?
So tell us your educational background, please.
I went to Dover Sherburne High School, and I went to Hartwick College, and then I went to Boston College School of Social Work.
And what degrees do you have?
So I have my master's in social, well, I have my BA in sociology, I have my master's in social work, and then I have 2 social work licenses, I guess. You have to get one before the other, so I only go by a licensed independent clinical social worker, but you have to get it's very confusing. You have to get 2 licenses, essentially.
You have those licenses?
Yes.
Within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
Yes.
Now, your employment, can you tell us what your employment history was since I guess you got your master's at BC or something?
Since I got my master's at BC, I did my final year internship at McLean Hospital at their trauma program. And then once I graduated, got my MSW, my master's of social work, and then my social work license, I was offered a per diem position at that program. And I did that position for, I think it was 2 to 3 months, and then I was rehired. I went back to the short-term unit at McLean, which I had previously worked at.
So when you say the short-term unit, is
Yes.
that also referred to as the STU?
Yes, we call it the STU. It's just short-term unit. It's also referred to as AB1, which is admissions building first floor.
Now, are you familiar with this case of Lindsay Clancy?
I'm only familiar about it from what I watched before I was sequestered, but other than that, I don't know the case at all.
And when you say what you watched before you were sequestered, what
Yes.
does that mean? What did you watch?
I think it was not this past Thursday, but the one before that. I'm not going to recall the date off the top of my head, but that's when, you had told me that I'm sequestered and to no longer watch the trial or consume any of it.
So what were you watching?
I had just been watching like the day-to-day, like the live stream, and just, yeah.
Why is that?
I'm interested in the case. I honestly got into sort of watching trials from the Karen Reed trial, and then I wanted to watch this case, and obviously, I worked at McLean, so I was curious to watch it.
And when did you work at McLean?
I started there in 2014, and then I left there in December 2021.
So how many years is that?
Oh, 7 years, 8 months, I think.
And what was the nature of your work? What'd you do?
I started as a mental health specialist there, which I think you can sort of try to summarize as those are the counselors are sort of directly on the unit with the patients. Our main role is to keep patients safe, really. So you're doing a lot of safety checks. You are putting eyes on patients to make sure they're not trying to harm or kill themselves. And we do crisis intervention. So when those things are happening, because they do, we are the ones to intervene. And unfortunately, there are a lot of restraints that happen on those units, and that's one of our main jobs.
So the STU that you referred to, are there a couple of them at McLean? Or?
So I'll try to explain it. When I first started there in 2014, it was 1 unit with 28 beds. During the time I was there was a renovation. They expanded the unit. It's a little confusing, but in 2016, I believe it it became two separate units operating the same way. So there's short-term unit north, and then there's short-term unit south, and now south has 22 beds and north has 23. So that's why you'll see, like, you know, AB1S, or, you know, so they're the same unit, but there's a south side and a north side, if that makes sense.
When you were working in that particular unit, is
Yeah.
that the same unit that Lindsay Clancy was in for the 4 to 5 day period?
Yes, I worked on both north and south for a significant amount of time.
And for all those years that you worked there, did you work days, nights, weekends, holidays?
So days and evenings, I preferred the evening shift, but you're supposed to do both, day and evening. I didn't do night. Sometimes you get mandated and you have to work an evening and a night shift, which is always pretty brutal, but I was day and evening.
Now, how about the staffing at STU, your experience?
So there's always, I can sort of start with the week, I guess. There's always 4 mental health specialists and 4 nurses during the week for the day shift. And then in the evening, it's 4 mental health specialists and 3 nurses. And then there's one and a half. It's hard to explain. There's at night, there's 3 mental health specialists, and then there's 1 nurse on north and 1 nurse on south, and then there's a nurse that goes in between at night to help both sides.
And how many beds are in the north and the south?
North is 23, south is 22.
And which one was Lindsay in?
South.
Are you familiar with the Code of Mass Regulations or regulations that mandate or require certain staffing levels within that particular unit, the STU of McLean?
Yes, like the Department of Mental Health regulations.
Can you tell the judge what your understanding of the regulations from the DMH would be on staffing?
Yeah, so the Department of Mental Health has to oversee all of the mental health facilities in Massachusetts, and they have specific requirements for safety regulation, for staffing ratios, how the unit has to be set up. You know, for example, there was a renovation while I was there to adjust handles on a sink because you could use it to harm yourself. So DMH, there's usually an annual or biannual inspection, and they will go around and they will look at charts, they will look at the unit, so they oversee everything.
And did they mandate how many doctors or nurses or safety people would be on a particular unit?
Yeah, they definitely have those requirements.
And what's your understanding of those requirements?
I believe, I don't want to say, I'm not sure exactly. Like, I know McLean follows those regulations, but I guess there's potential that McLean might go higher than the ratio. I'm not sure. So you have to, at minimum, have a certain amount of staff, but I'm not exactly sure on that.
Are you aware in this case that McLean forwarded to the district attorney's office and the court certain discovery?
Yes.
Indicating how many doctors, nurses, and
Yes.
safety workers. Did you have a chance to read that?
I did.
All right. Is it your understanding that the requirements of the DMH and minimum staffing on, well, let's say on weekends and holidays, for example, does that change year to year, or is that pretty static?
It's never changed. I mean, it didn't change from when I was there and with that document. So I guess that goes to what, 2023 it was. So it didn't, that was how it was when I started. Well, I guess one caveat, when it changed from a 28 bed unit to 22 and 23, there was, different numbers, because with 28 patients, you have to have, a certain number of staff. But so since it's been 22 and 23 patients on those 2 units, the staffing has not changed from when I started there and from that document that I reviewed.
Now, you indicated that you, because of your interest, were watching the proceedings on this case.
Yes.
On what, YouTube or something? Or,
yeah, whatever.
TV?
You can, yeah.
And you had the occasion to hear the cross-examination of Patrick Clancy by the district attorney, is that right?
Yes.
You mean the direct?
I'm sorry?
The direct of
Sorry,
Patrick Clancy.
you're right. It's been a long week. Okay, direct examination. And the focus was on the fact that when Lindsay went into the hospital, it was on New Year's Eve. Is that correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that she was there for that holiday weekend, and I
Right.
think the following Monday was a holiday?
Yes.
and you heard the direct examination of the district attorney asking about McLean being #1 hospital in the country, McLean having all of these services available to the inmates that are in there, treating them, offering all these fantastic programs on the holiday weekends and the holidays, as opposed to what Patrick had testified to. Did you see that?
Will you re-ask that question? I think I understand, but.
Okay, when you were watching on the television,
Yeah.
you saw, or the computer, you saw the questioning of the district attorney of
Right.
Patrick Clancy.
Yep.
You heard Patrick Clancy make reference to the fact that his wife admitted herself into the
Right.
STU
Yep.
on holiday weekend, New Year's.
Yes. Yes.
Was there all that weekend,
Right.
into a holiday.
Right.
And the district attorney then questioning Patrick
Right.
inquired as to whether he was aware that it was
Yes.
the best hospital in the country, that there were many doctors and nurses and staff available and programs available, and Lindsay wasn't interested in any of that, right?
Yes, that's what I took from it.
Now, in your 8 years, however many years of experience that
Mm-hmm.
you had, is that what your understanding was in that unit?
No, that's not what I was understanding, no.
So tell the judge what your understanding was from your experience, hands-on, day after day, working in the STU for all of those years.
Right.
But you also were a supervisor of the STU at one time.
I actually wasn't. I became a social worker there, so I guess you could, one way to look at it is that, the social worker and the psychiatrist, you are the treatment team, so you're making all the decisions for the patients, and so the nurses and the mental health specialists, I don't like to create a hierarchy, but they are operating underneath you, so in a way I'm supervising, but I was never a direct supervisor.
Now, you came out with a TikTok or
I did.
a reel or whatever you call it.
Yeah, TikTok.
And would you agree with me that you were pretty angry when you did that?
Yeah, definitely emotional.
So tell the judge, why were you emotional when you did that TikTok?
Well, it's a lengthy TikTok. It's about 10 minutes. And I was emotional because I felt like what was discussed in court was not aligned with what my experience was. I noted several things. I'll try to summarize some of them. There was mention that there's individual therapy on the unit. There is not. There was mention of seeing a doctor every day. I felt like there was some misleading of that. You do see a doctor every day, but on the weekends and on a holiday, it's one doctor who's seeing all of the patients. The meetings can be as short as 1 minute. Many patients decline those meetings. And the doctor who's there on the weekend and holidays is seeing 23 patients. So I felt it was misleading to indicate that there's sort of a in-depth doctor session when it's very brief.
How about programs that are offered, like making things out of clay and crayons and stuff like that?
Yes, there's clay on the unit. It's called Model Magic. It's a non-toxic kid. It's it's advertised for kids, but it's on the unit. It's in the nursing station. It's out on the unit. There is a lot of coloring. There's a specific group that I saw in the documents I reviewed called Music and Mandalas. Mandalas are basically adult coloring books. The designs are kind of abstract. You could compare it to like looking through a kaleidoscope or something, and you color them in. And Music and Mandalas is a group where you play music and the patients color.
So you understand from watching the proceedings that you became emotional over is that Lindsay went in on New Year's Eve with some fairly serious
Right.
symptomology. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Patrick indicated that they were, quite frankly, pretty bluntly disgusted with the help and the care that was allegedly offered to her, right?
Right.
And you were upset about what you felt was a misleading of this witness based on the questions that were asked. Is that right?
Yes.
And Patrick had made reference to the fact that she was doing coloring and she was in the groups that were sitting there dealing with the clay and that basically they felt that it was not bluntly any help.
Yes, and there's very minimal like family contact when the main treatment team is not there, so it's not abnormal that families wouldn't be getting like regular or like in-depth updates of what's going on. You're sort of supposed to wait until the treatment team comes back, whether it's on a Monday or in this case a Tuesday, since Monday was a holiday. That's the team who's going to be working with the patient, so most updates and communication with family and with providers aren't going to happen over the weekend either.
Now, one of the things that that occurred, just for the background, is that your TikTok was observed by me, and I tried to reach out to you and couldn't find you.
That's correct.
And then I had a private investigator, Bob Jones, hunt you down, kind of, and ended up in front of your house.
No, Bob and I were sort of chuckling about that because he never ended up outside of my house, but the rest of it is all accurate. So he wasn't outside of my house, but the rest of that was true.
So he was able to locate you.
He was,
He was able to talk to you.
He was, yes.
Get your contact information.
Yes.
Provide that to me.
Yep.
And as a result of that, I reached out to you, and then you indicated that you, initially somewhat reluctant, but then ultimately agreed to get involved and talk to the judge, right?
Yes, yes. Okay.
Now, the district attorney is objecting to your testimony, and I believe they're going to argue that the change from that 1 year period, when did you leave working there?
I want to say my last date was like December 18th. Since working there, you don't get a lot of holidays off. So out of all my time there, I said, I'm going to leave right before the holidays and be able to enjoy that. So I believe it was December 18th, but mid-December. 2021. 2021. Yeah.
And when was Lindsay in there?
December 31st, right? She came in on New Year's Eve, what would that be? 2022, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So in your opinion, is there a change that is significant in the staffing, in the nurse to patient ratio, in the safety issues, the crayons, the coloring, and all of that? Is there any change from that 1 year that you left to the time that she was in there?
From the records I reviewed as well, those are exactly the same staffing ratios, and all of the groups are the same.
So there's no change whatsoever?
Not from what I can tell from what I reviewed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Kamal?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
So you are currently a social worker who does their own, a licensed independent clinical social worker, right? That's the license. Or when you're saying that's really what you kind of go by.
Yes, I'm a social worker by trade, you could say, but I'm practicing as a therapist.
And you do that virtually?
Yes.
So you don't have a brick and mortar where clients come and engage in therapy with you, right?
No, rent is expensive, so right now I'm all virtual.
Okay. And you indicated that in your time at McLean Hospital that you first started as a per diem, and that was as a mental health specialist, right?
I didn't start per diem there. I started at a 32-hour position. The per diem, there's another position I held at McLean, which is called a community residence counselor. That was a per diem position. And then the social work position I took after graduating and before I went back to McLean, the short-term unit, that was a per diem position.
So the per diem role that you had, how long did you do that role?
On which unit?
Well, you just said, when I asked you about working per diem, you said you were the community resident counselor.
Yes, I mentioned two per diem positions, so I just wanted to be clear. I believe it was around a year. It was on the side while I was working on the short-term unit. That was the main unit I worked on, but since I was 32 hours, I was interested in that particular McLean program, so I picked up a shift, every so often, but I was primarily on the short-term unit.
As what, though? As a mental health?
As a mental health specialist, yep.
And so you said once you got your master's, you took on a role of clinical social worker there, right?
So yes, I did.
And that was in September of 2019?
Yes.
And you said you had a chance to review the records that were sent over by McLean, right?
Right.
Now, when you were a social worker from September of 2019 to December of 2021,
Yeah.
what was your schedule?
So I would come in around 9. It was, you could view it as sort of normal business hours. My clinical rounds that I did with all the multidisciplinary staff was at 9:55. So that was kind of a little bit of my start time, but generally probably like 9 to 5, you could say.
And was that Monday through Friday?
Yes, I did cover weekends on occasion. Social workers, you're not required to, but it's kind of highly encouraged. So, every once in a while, I would cover a weekend as a social worker.
And you're aware that the records that came from McLean Hospital indicate that during the time period of January 1st to January 15th of 2023, that the social worker role was a day position that was Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And that on January 1st, which was a Sunday, there was no social worker there.
Yeah, I saw that.
And on January 2nd, which would have been the observed holiday for
Right.
New Year's, there was no social worker there.
That's what I saw.
Okay. And while you would pick up shifts, the majority of your schedule was 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
From 2019 to 2021.
Yeah, I mean, I did regularly pick up weekends, but yes, primarily I was there during the week.
Okay. Now, you provided Attorney Reddington with some kind of like typed up notes. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Where you outlined kind of what your experience was on the unit and how inpatients were, how inpatient experiences went, like
Yeah.
the schedule and that kind of thing. And you noted that as far as the treatment team, which you referred to yourself as a social worker, worked with a psychiatrist, right?
Right, right.
And you identified that in your experience there was 3 teams, red, green, or blue.
Yes.
But you are also aware that the records show that every day during the week that the treatment team of a social worker and a psychiatrist, there was 4 social workers and 4 psychiatrists that were on shift.
Right.
So where's the 4th?
So the numbers aren't equal. So the medical director often took residents, so he would have a little bit less of a caseload. The lead social worker on the unit, she would go in between the different units, so she would take a smaller caseload on one unit. So, for example, I had 8 patients on my caseload, but one of my social work colleagues would have 6. So it's not an even distribution of the 3. Some of the doctors and some of the social workers just carried a different number of caseload. So,
But your testimony today, after having now reviewed the records, is that it's always been 4 social workers, 4 doctors.
yeah, I didn't say that there wasn't before.
Well, we don't. That's why you're here, because we don't know.
Yeah, I
what
just
you said
thought I
before.
answered your question. So, but yes.
And you came aware of this case by watching the trial, right?
Yes.
And so would you say that how many days of the trial did you watch?
All of them up until that point.
At what point? What day?
I'm not remembering the date exactly. Not last Thursday, but the Thursday before.
What was the last content of testimony that you remember watching?
I believe it was maybe Patrick's friends, or I was aware that there were doctors testifying. Mr. Reddington made sure I was not watching anymore, and that there were doctors coming up that were particularly important for me to not watch.
And you were asked by Attorney Reddington here about observing that testimony or the direct examination of Patrick, and I think he mentioned where it was referred to that McLean was the best hospital in the country. Do you recall that being the question that was asked of Patrick Clancy?
I don't recall.
And in fact, the Commonwealth didn't ask about his opinions of the status of the hospital, but did just verify with reference to records whether or not he knew his wife participated in particular things that were contained within the records. Did you see that in the testimony?
Yes.
And so you're aware that the testimony actually was that, or the question was, were you aware that she declined groups?
Yes.
And that's based on records you've never seen, right?
Correct.
And as far as the contact with the staff and the doctors, meaning nurses or social workers or whatnot, you haven't reviewed any of those records, right?
I have not.
And so you don't know the extent of what the interaction was with the nurse and the patient, do you?
I mean, there are some general guidelines that you have to follow. I can't tell you the content within them, but for example, mental health specialists, you're not supposed to meet with a patient longer than 20 minutes because you have other things to do. So I can't speak specifically to what happened in those conversations, but I know the general gist of how everybody's role works.
But you, when you say everybody's role, did you ever perform the role of a nurse?
No, but I work directly with them. I'm operating on the job description. It says specifically you're under the direction of the nurse. So I worked directly with nurses.
Do you go through the same training as a nurse?
No.
As far as what your knowledge is of mental health specialists, fair to say the last time you were employed as a mental health specialist there and did that work yourself was in May of 2019.
Yep.
And then you transitioned to being a social worker where you worked closely with the psychiatrist and primarily Monday through Friday.
Yeah, psychiatrists, the nurses, and the mental health specialists, you all really work together.
And you can only attest to what you would put in a note, right? As far as your contact with a patient as a social worker?
No, you have access to all of the patients on the unit, so I'm able, and it's not a HIPAA violation to do that because we all work together. Sometimes I cover other social workers' patients, so I do have access. You have access to all of the records in every patient's file, so you can read everybody's notes.
I guess my question, and that probably was a bad question, but my question is to you. Mm-hmm. When you are the social worker for a patient on the treatment team that you've described,
yep,
you enter the information into the note for the social worker that
yes,
becomes part of the record.
Correct.
And those are your words, your observations, your contact.
Correct.
You don't write them for other people, do you?
No, but we have to follow a certain format. So, for example, we have to write a biopsychosocial note, which is a fairly lengthy assessment, but that's a social work. You know, I learned that in grad school, so I don't know how everybody writes their notes, but we have to follow a pretty strict format to write our notes.
And is it your testimony that McLean requires only that each social worker spends a particular period of time or a max amount of time with each patient to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I have 8 patients on my caseload, so I have to see 8 patients every day, and so you are limited with how much time you can spend with them because there's several other tasks I have to do, so you really can't spend a significant amount of time with your patients.
But that wasn't my question. My question was, does McLean tell you that you can only spend 5, 10, or 15 minutes with a patient?
Yes, it's directly told from the people above me. It's something that's communicated in a way where you could sort of get in trouble if you're not doing that. So yes, it comes directly from McLean.
And do you have any information, having left there in 2021, that the same people supervising the social workers were giving those same instructions?
I mean, no, I don't know that.
Do you know anything about how many people were actually occupying beds between January 1st and January 5th of 2023?
No, it obviously has a max of, but so I don't know how many patients were there, but you can have up to 22 there, so yeah.
And you've also indicated in your notes to Attorney Reddington that sometimes the people that are there for a particular period of time have the ability to go out on passes for weekends.
Yes.
Does that, in your experience, did that tend to happen around holidays?
Yes.
And so you don't know between January 1st and January 5th of 2023 who might have been assigned to a bed there but out on a pass that weekend, do you?
No, I don't know what happened that weekend.
And that would affect how many people are actually occupying the beds would affect the ratio of staff to patient during that time period, right?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, I mean, it's the same amount of staff there. Are you saying like they're
right,
meeting with patients? Right, it's the same amount of
staff regardless because it's by shift, right?
Right.
So if the unit has 22 beds in it, but say 5 people are off on a pass for that weekend, then the same staff that are there
Right.
for the entire weekend have 5 less patients. They have to
No,
round
no,
with.
no, you're still assigned, every patient has to be assigned to a mental health specialist and a nurse. And so when you go on a pass, there's a limit. And day and evening shift, like the limit of the pass is 8 hours. So no matter what, you have to check in with your staff person before you leave for your pass, and you have to check in with your assigned staff when you come back. So there's no patient who's not assigned to somebody, it's just they might not be on the unit the whole time when you're on your shift.
Okay, so if they're not, they might not lose a patient on their load.
Yeah.
For instance, but that person isn't there that they have to check in with every so often, or they have to check in with about groups or keep track of or meet with, right? If they're on a pass and they're out of the facility for 8
Right.
hours, they're physically not present, and that worker doesn't have eyes on them.
Yeah, you only check in once per shift anyway, so if they're going, you check in with them before, and when they come back, you check in with them after. But yes, you're not checking in with them when they're off the unit.
And you don't know what the numbers were
No, I don't.
during that time period. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
All right. All right, Ms. Rankin, I'll hear you on the motion. You may step down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I think it's obvious that the witness has the educational background. She certainly has the experience, interestingly enough, of that very unit that Lindsay was on for that period of time. She's well aware of the staffing, indicated to you that the staffing ratio to patient, et cetera, has not changed according to the items that the government has brought here today. That at the time that she was there, it was on a weekend. She indicated about the weekend staffing, the holiday staffing. Indicated that they have these coloring programs and programs that Patrick was relating to, and indicates the skeleton crew, if you will, in a sense, on that particular period of time in the holidays, which is very corroborative of what Patrick had indicated in his testimony. So, I'm not looking to bring her in to disparage McLean Hospital. They've done a good job of that themselves. I'm bringing her in to just have evidence as to what Patrick's testimony was relating to what his wife went through when she was in McLean, to corroborate the fact, as opposed to what was raised on direct exam with the government when they were questioning him about all of these wonderful programs that she apparently was not interested in participating in, which is very, very, I would argue, improper inference for the jury to consider.
All right. Kamal?
Your Honor, would object to the witness, and even now after the voir dire, I think it's clear that the best evidence of what the defendant was provided by way of care, treatment, however you want to call it, is the record in and of itself. It's the record from McLean that documents each and every contact she had with each and every person that was on staff during the time period she was there. Now, just to be clear, there's been some indication that she went there on the 31st of December, but the records are clear to say she was transported, and she didn't arrive at McLean until the early morning hours of January 1st. So that's when the records start, and they document her each and every day and each and every step of the way, consistent with how Dr. Goodhart described the process of how you're intake and then how you go through the day and what the general schedule is in the contact with the treatment team. This witness is offering no more information than what's contained within the record, and no more information that's what's contained in the records that were just received for the trial subpoena. And I would suggest to you that the fact that she, in her last role as a social worker from 2019 to 2021, where she was a day staff person that worked Monday through Friday, that wasn't there on the weekends, that she does have a limited amount of information, and it's attenuated, more attenuated than we had initially believed, from the dates in which the defendant was at this particular hospital. So I would suggest, or I would object and argue that the best evidence is the records in and of themselves, the records that now have been subpoenaed that can be admitted to identify the particular staff. I'd also like to point out that counsel is referring to offering this to rebut certain inferences or certain statements that the Commonwealth made in the direct examination of Mr. Clancy, but no one has said that McLean is a #1 hospital. That wasn't the testimony. That wasn't the question put before him. It was simply what he knew, what he observed, and if he knew what was contained within the record. So there's been no presentation of evidence that would suggest that a person needs to come in to dispute that the groups are the groups. The court and the jury can see from the record what the groups were, and they can make their own decisions based on what they described them to be in the record, if that was treatment or not treatment. I don't believe that the Commonwealth presented it as treatment. I believe the Commonwealth presented it as resources available to the individual while they were there at the hospital. The treatment piece or the therapy comes from the psychiatrist, which this witness can't testify to because she's not. So I would object for her to being called as a witness for those reasons.
All right. All right. Well, I'm looking at this really as a kind of two issues. First is late disclosure of the witness, and I'm not, and that goes into a whole different analysis, and also analysis under Rule 403, which is relating to relevant evidence. And as that rule, proposed rule says, evidence may be excluded if its probative value is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice, confusion of the issues, or misleading the jury, or by considerations of, well, that part doesn't apply. First off, I find this witness credible. I find that, and I appreciate her being willing to offer the information that she has, but that's not always the whole finding on this. And so under cases such as Taylor versus Illinois, Commonwealth versus Dunning, Commonwealth versus Steinmeier, a couple other cases, I have to look at a number of factors. The first is prevention of surprise. Well, the Commonwealth has been aware of this issue for at least a week or so, so I'm not considering that. Evidence of bad faith, there's no bad faith I see from either side in naming this or calling this person at this time. There's the prejudice to the other party. I think there's just limited prejudice, if any, to the Commonwealth. However, though, the final two are the issues that I think are more relevant in this. One is the materiality of the testimony in this. And I find that there's limited materiality, that's hard to say, because mainly this witness hadn't worked there for a year. So there's at least a gap between when she worked there and when the relevant time period is here. There's also, I imagine, different personnel. They're working on different shifts. And so there's kind of limited value to that testimony. I also, I don't remember any five-star type inferences. In fact, so I'm not going to, that's going to be measured by the jury. But I didn't see any mentions that this was a five-star facility. And then also the concern is, or the factor is, the effectiveness of less severe sanctions. And I would find that the records that have been brought in pursuant to the subpoena in the last couple of days from McLean's talks about the staffing levels on holidays and not on holidays. So if there's a question of whether or not there was a quote-unquote skeleton crew that was on for those, at least the first 2 days of this time that Ms. Clancy was there, that's reflected in the records. There also, in the records here, is a list of whatever programs were offered and also when they were offered. So if there's a question of less programs being offered on a holiday than during the week, those are contained in the records. And so I'm going to deny the defendant's motion to call this witness, but I am going to allow the defendant, if the defendant wishes, to submit those McLean's records specifically regarding the staffing and the programs that are available, not just on that weekend, but for the week. And I think there's records in there for the week before. So there could be a comparison between what was available to Ms. Clancy during the week and what was available to her on a holiday weekend. So that's going to be my finding. I'll issue a written ruling on this, but I just kind of wanted to give the parties at least some idea, as well as the witness who's been here, I know, a couple of days. I just kind of wanted to thank her for that. So with that, we'll be in recess till 2:15. We'll come back and resume the trial. Okay?
Thank you.
Court, all rise.
I know it's a technicality, no my objection.
Duly noted. Thank you.